So Phase 5 is officially here, and... Now, I was pretty hyped for this movie, so when I saw these reviews, I was concerned. I have not seen a movie divide a fan base this evenly since The Last Jedi. I have a lot of thoughts on this movie, and no, I will not even attempt to avoid spoilers, so this is your one and only warning. If you have not seen this movie, come back here when you have. So this movie is interesting, to say the least. It was marketed as a Civil War level entry for the MCU with Avengers level stakes and as an epic in scale. Peyton Reed said he's tired of making the palate cleansers, but maybe he should stick with them. I've got a lot of thoughts, and I let them simmer for a while, and honestly, I'm torn, which is kinda sad for me. I never thought I'd be torn on this movie. Like, I really wanted to like this movie, but the more I think about it, the more I just kind of don't. But there are things I did like. So before I get too critical, let me go through those things. First, like all Ant-Man movies, Paul Rudd is charming and charismatic. I like seeing how his life is now post-Endgame, but unfortunately, it's just a few minutes in the beginning of the movie. I'm really shocked that Luis and Scott's other friends, Cassie's mom and stepdad, don't appear in the movie at all. What else do I like? I like Janet a lot in this, actually. Yeah, I enjoyed seeing her backstory and the conflict that she brings to the story. I mean, it takes place in the Quantum Realm, and she spent so much time down there, it makes sense she'd be a bigger focus in the story. Trying to think, what else was cool in this movie? Kang. Yeah. Across nearly all negative reviews, there is some praise reserved for Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror. He is the main reason I wanted to see this movie, and with what he's given, he absolutely delivers. He gets some of the coldest lines. He is set up to be an absolute freak of nature, until he's defeated by a bunch of giant mech ants in a Deus Ex Machina. I feel bad for complaining about this, because I really want to like what they're setting up here, but right now, I'm just not convinced it's gonna work. Now that I've told you all what I thought worked, it's time to get critical again. And let's just start at the beginning. Like I said before, we don't spend much time at all with the Ant fam on Earth before going down to the Quantum Realm. The lighthearted family drama is only present when it's Cassie taking subtle jabs at Scott for being a piece of shit dad over the years. And speaking of Cassie, I'm gonna be totally honest, I was not won over by Catherine Newton's performance. I wasn't one of those people saying we should boycott this movie just because they screwed over the Endgame actress. It's obvious they want someone with more stardom in the role, and Catherine Newton is a good actress, but this just wasn't it. All she does is run around places and yell, "Dad, Dad, Dad!" It just didn't feel like I was watching a father and daughter interact with each other. And you could argue maybe Scott feels the same way because he's never been a very present father. But I think that's being just too generous to the casting and directing department. I heard a lot of people say the first act or even the first half of the movie was hard to get through, and I sorta get that. Once you enter the Quantum Realm, it just becomes a backdrop for anything weird or wacky in a sci-fi universe. The Quantum Realm is super intriguing in concept, but in execution it's just an alien world from Star Wars. Like the Quantum Realm sky is just fucking Coruscant. It feels like they asked just AI to generate random weird-looking humanoids and creatures and then threw them in the mix there. There's no real lore here, except that Kang conquered the Quantum Realm and now they're displaced from their homes. There's tons of jokes here, some work and some don't. If you want to make the viewing experience a little more enjoyable, take a shot every time someone says him or he for dramatic effect when referring to Kang. The movie has a pretty fast pace, but it's not always super engaging or entertaining. However, once Kang enters the picture, the movie really picks up. Through flashbacks, we see the man, Nathaniel Richards, as just a man. A very empathetic man, too, but a man who sees Kang the Conqueror as something he needs to be in order to fix the multiverse. Whenever Kang is on screen, he demands your attention and intrigue. He's an absolute menace. He's cold and next level, but he's still very human. While I expected this movie to introduce Kang, I didn't expect it to be dedicated solely to introducing him, especially with how this introductory chapter ends, but I'll talk about that later. Let's talk about the oddly shaped elephant in the room, MODOK. So this is another divisive decision Marvel has made. They took MODOK's name and design and repurposed him for the MCU. Rather than be a separate and unique character, MODOK is the name that a deformed Darren Cross takes in the Quantum Realm, and he looks very weird. People say MODOK looks bad, but I mean, he's not meant to really look good. But if you said this does not look like Corey Stoll, I'd actually agree with you. It's the Uncanny Valley again, and I think this time they just stretched out a model of Corey Stoll's head to fit MODOK's dimensions. It's really the eyes that break the immersion for for me. But in terms of character choice, I don't really care. I don't have any attachment to MODOK from the comics, so I'm personally fine with how they used him here. The CGI in this movie as a whole is very hit or miss. Now, I know they couldn't shrink down the cast and crew to an actual subatomic universe, but I'm reminded often they're on a glorified soundstage whenever a giant iridescent gummy slime slug horse walks in view of the camera. Kang's design is really cool when he's actually wearing a costume, because when he's fighting, he's CGI and does not look that great all the time. It's like a Power Ranger with shoddy facial tracking. The quality of visual effects in these movies has fallen off hard since Endgame, which was caused by the pandemic most likely, but now they're still using dozens of VFX houses. I feel bad for all those artists who are being overworked and underpaid, but I'm still gonna criticize the final product. And the sad fact is, this movie is loaded with unconvincing or distracting CGI. The third act is probably the most enjoyable part of the film, but it's definitely overcrowded and contrived. And this brings me back to the issues I had with Kang's portrayal. Kang the Conqueror in this film has been around for longer than we can fathom and has fought and killed more Avengers than we can know. Whatever he was planning to do spooked his variant so much that it took all of them to exile him to the quantum realm. The marketing for this movie centered around Kang coming in to lay waste to the status quo, and the plot revolves around Kang trying to escape. If I had $1 for every time I saw a comment online saying, "Oh my god, Ant-Man is going to die," I would have my rent covered for at least a month. Quantumania is written by Jeff Loveness, who has worked on Rick and Morty, but he's also writing the next Avengers movie, The Kang Dynasty. Quantumania's bottom line is setting up the Kang Dynasty, there's no doubt about that, but that has turned off a lot of viewers. Critics think everything Quantumania presents is something we've already seen before, but this time repackaged to be a wacky, microscopic germ sci-fi adventure. These critics are smoking crack. I would rather watch Quantumania a dozen times over before I sit through one more viewing of Thor: The Dark World. These critics like self-contained stories that work on their own. They don't like stuff that exists to set up later stuff. And that's totally fine, but that doesn't mean this movie is bad. So sure, this movie does set up what's to come for the MCU, but I don't think it did it very well. While I love Kang and love Jonathan Majors in the role, I can't help but feel underwhelmed by his character in the end. This movie introduces Kang as the new big bad of the MCU, but then our heroes defeat him in this movie. His death is stupid, but at the same time, it might not be. I don't think he's dead, but the movie treats this like a death. I know Kang having infinite variations of himself is a big part of the character, but I thought they would have made a prime Kang for us to follow, like a Nexus being in the story. I thought this version of Kang was going to fill that role. He wants revenge on those who banished him, as well as Janet, and to conquer the multiverse to stop further interference with it. But then he dies, and our heroes win. Or did they? Now we get to the mid and post-credits scene, and oh boy, are they really something. I see nearly a perfect split in response to the mid-credits scene, which I'll talk about first. I think it is so unbelievably cool that we got the Council of Kangs in the MCU. It is super cool in concept, yet I can't help but feel that this mid-credits scene looks a little goofy. The mid-credits scene looks and feels unfinished. Maybe it's just me, but it looked cheap and thrown together at the last minute. This mid-credits scene gave us Rama Tut and Immortus this early in Phase 5, and that's a big deal. But I wasn't thinking, wow, that's Rama Tut and Immortus. I was thinking, wow, so that's what Jonathan Majors looks like as Rama Tut and Immortus. It seems like people think this was either the coolest thing ever or just stupid and off-putting. The post-credits scene is actually cool. It shows Victor Timely in the past with Loki and Mobius, and I'm super excited to see where that goes. So is this movie as bad as critics are saying it is? No, I don't think so. I'd still rank this higher than Thor: Love and Thunder and Multiverse of Madness. I think the idea of pitting Ant-Man against someone as big as Kang is a really cool idea. It would naturally have the biggest stakes since Endgame. But in the end, there's no immediate consequences. Yeah, there's some teases for the future, but that's years away. Imagine instead this movie focused a lot more on the emotional and familial side of the Ant-Man narrative, and in the end, Kang killed Scott and escaped. It would be devastating, and this movie would have insane word of mouth. But that's not what happened. Instead, nobody except Kang dies. Oh yeah, I forgot about MODOK, sorry. Everything seems fine, for now. They nerfed the absolute hell out of Kang, but I don't think they should have. I get he doesn't have his chair and other weapons, but he can float and shoot an endless beam that just erases you from existence if it touches you. Whatever, man, it's a dumb superhero movie. That's really what this is. That's what most of these movies are anyways. It's an easy way to kill 2 hours. This movie is not that bad, but it's also not very good. If I said I didn't enjoy watching this, I'd be lying, because I did. It's just now after seeing it twice and reflecting on it more that I actually have a more clear idea of how I feel about it. I think that if Jeff Loveness nails the Kang Dynasty, then people will look back on this movie a lot more favorably. People will say we misunderstood it when it came out, and I hope that happens, but you know, it might not. There's still so much to come in Phase 5. I don't want to hear anyone saying, well, rip, the MCU is finally dead. The people who say that they're done with the MCU keep saying they're done with the MCU after having watched every latest release in the MCU. Quantumania is no different. All in all, it's a fun movie to watch, but it's also very flawed. I'm gonna give Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania a 6 out of 10.
Please consider subscribing to Remnant Core's YouTube channel. He's a YouTuber who I really like, and I think you all will like him too. So subscribe and like this video. Thank you, Jack.